Hi, my name is Rich Panico. I am the Chief Commercial Officer of Symbio Pro Nevera, and welcome to another edition of our podcast, Pharma Talk. Today we'll be talking with Greg Plunkett, the CEO of Accelagen. Accelagen is an Australian-based CRO. We're going to talk about the tax benefits of working in Australia and the CRO landscape in Australia. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Okay, very excited today. Greg Plunkett from Accelagen is in all the way from Australia just to come and do this podcast with us. So, Greg, thank you very much for coming. And this should be fun. And this probably, I should probably say, almost certainly will be the only time I have another CRO on a podcast. But we're friends, not competitors. So we work together. So how about this? Why don't you introduce Accelagen so people can learn about you a little bit more?
Sure, Rich, absolutely. Look, so Accelagen, for way down under, we're an Australian-based regulatory and clinical CRO, headquartered in Melbourne, but a team that spans Australia and even into New Zealand as well. Founded in 2010. Over that time, we've grown into what we are today, and really been able to attract some really talented people and to become who we are, and being able to support clients and some mutual clients as well, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always curious with this. How did you go from, okay, I'm going to start a company? So you're working for other people, and then all of a sudden, you do it on your own.
You'd make that jump. So I'd love to tell you this elaborate story and this well-planned execution, but unfortunately it wasn't that. The choice really came about was after working for both big and small pharma over the years and rising through the ranks and taking on more and more responsibility. I needed to do something for me and change the paradigm a little bit for me and I guess my family as well, importantly. And the opportunity of using that expertise that's been growing over the years, and I had a lot of friends in the industry who worked for others, and they asked questions. What do you think about this? How would you go about that? And I thought, well, you know what, I could turn this into a bit of a job and doing it on my own and work under my own steam in a way. And it took for the first 6 years, it was just me.
Okay.
And then so now we've sort of grown in that time, and we just about tip over 60 employees, and
Excellent.
It's been a journey. I think it's really been the people we have, which has been our biggest contribution. And look, we decided to change things up a little bit in Australia, and I think we enjoy a bit of fun and enjoy what we do, and ultimately we've set about a mission statement, and that's something we try to abide by every day, and that's really to make a difference to the future of human health. That's something as a company, our ethos and values is really built around that principle.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. So started out more consulting.
Indeed, yes.
And then
in the regulatory space, and over my career, I've had the opportunity really to work from laboratory scale right through to commercial. So taking products from concept to commercialization is the way I like to describe it. And that's pretty rare in Australia. There's not a lot of companies that you can work with and see the journey really from that prototyping right through to what is a product on the shelf. So having that opportunity and seeing the journey, and then how different parts of the company and different specialties fit into it, put me in a really unique position that I can take that knowledge and really help others out who are also embarking on that, and really paying it forward from a knowledge base and support.
Yeah, I remember. So that's probably a good way to start. We didn't start that way. When we started Symbio, Deborah and myself and Rose, we were under the impression that, okay, we have some friends that are going to go to study right off the bat, so we're going to take off. And of course, that didn't happen. So we borrowed some money. We're down to about our last month, and in the back of my mind, okay, I know I can go work here, I can work there for somebody else. And then it just hit. We got a large study, then another, and 23 years later, we're still doing it, and some with the same clients. So it's scary. I don't know that I would, like today, want to start a company.
No, probably what we know now, we'd probably steer the other way and go, there's easier ways to make a living.
Yeah, I just think it's so difficult to get started, but.
It is, but I think it's also a testament to who you are and who you wanted to be. That's why 23 years later you are doing what you are, and I think that's such an important element.
Yeah.
Too often, I think industries like ours, they probably don't pay enough credit to the talent that is and what people's motivations are. And I think we've always tried to keep that front of mind. I think that's why, one, we've been able to attract the clients, and two, why the staff are still there as well and being part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, you can't put a value across that approach or that ethos.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, like I said, here you are 23 years later and you're doing something right, and that's the most important thing.
If COVID didn't come around, it would have been so much easier.
Oh, indeed.
But you actually worked on a lot of COVID trials, right?
We did, yeah. We were fortunate to, during COVID, we actually expanded. We probably increased our headcount by 30%.
Wow.
Just being able to give opportunities we had 3 different COVID vaccine trials that we worked on. Plus in Australia, there was the mechanism that we were considered an essential worker. And as such, we could work as normal. There was difficulty in getting to sites and being able to travel, obviously. But in doing so, we then engaged and employed people across the country. And Australia being the size, travelling on a plane for 3 or 4 hours is not great. So we actually put people close to where the sites were. So it actually allowed us to diversify.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, it was tough here in the U.S. If you weren't one of the big CROs and involved in vaccine trials, it was a rocky road. So, and I just still feel like we're just really coming out of it because of all the delays, and especially in the U.S. I think it didn't really turn around a lot until 2022 for the non-large CROs. But
Indeed.
Again, you survive, you keep going,
Yeah, we've seen a lot of consolidation of companies.
Right.
And there were a lot of people we knew who went out on their own and decided in 2018 or 2019, you know what, I'm going to go and start consulting myself.
Right.
Well, they're no longer doing that. So they didn't quite survive, unfortunately, the COVID times. But it allowed, for us as a company, we'd actually been working in a ways that with COVID came along, it just sort of, it was systems as normal. And that was great. It was sort of vindicated as to why we had chosen a very remote approach and just the mechanisms in which we operated.
Yeah.
Not a lot of change, which is great.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm glad it worked out for you.
So am I.
I have to ask one more question, just because it interests me. How do you get the name Accelagen?
Well, like I said, the starting of the company wasn't some well thought out idea. We originally founded as Plunkett Consulting Group.
Okay.
Now, it was
Direct.
Not a lot of imagination. Accelagen sort of came about when we were looking at what we are trying to do, and a big part of our work is bringing forward new therapies, new opportunities, the new generation of treatments. And that's where Accelagen came through, looking at Excel to bring forward and the gen from the new generation.
Right.
So it was really about bringing forward that new generation.
Yeah.
And that's how it sort of came about. It was unique, and I think it suited us well. Yeah,
it is a good name. We picked a name. My partner wrote about 100 names down. And he was like, oh, that one looks good. Let's take Symbio. That was all the thought that's put into it. Sometimes we're asked, how'd you come up with that name? I'm like, it's like almost eeny, meeny, miny, moe in a way. We just selected it.
Throw a dart. Well, at least you actually had a list of 100. I just had one, that sounds good. Let's go with that.
Right. So we also have something in common in that we work with our families.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of quotes. The best thing about my job is working with my family, and the worst thing about my job is working with my family. No.
And depending on whether you ask myself or my wife, you might have two contrasting points. Yeah. But it is. It's unique. So, Rosa, my wife, joined in, I think it was 2014.
Okay,
so
early.
Just on 10 years. Before that, she was working at larger CROs and actually worked within the hospital environment as well. So, she came from very much the operational, patient-facing side of things and really complemented what we were doing at the time, where people wanted some initial clinical trial consultancy, and she fit the bill very, very well.
Right.
And now she's our director of operations and oversees the entire, operational team, which is great. And although our kids might think it's the worst thing to that we do, work together, but dinner
Yeah.
time conversations interesting.
No, it's always tough when you all work together as a family to separate your workday from your home time, especially during the week.
Absolutely. Biggest challenge ever. And
Yeah.
my kids are old enough now, they know to pull us up if conversations at the dinner table are sort of getting too work intense.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly, exactly. So I want to talk to you about, we share some clients. We're working together now, and a lot of biotech companies should or want to start in Australia because there's huge tax breaks or advantages, I should say. So I was wondering if you could just kind of go through that because I think a lot of our biotech clients are going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, look, absolutely. We talk about some of the Australian advantages on three key areas: speed, quality, and cost. So quality wise from Australia, we're an ICH country, so we follow ICH guidance. So data that's generated in Australia readily acceptable by FDA, EMA, and other regulatory agencies. So from that perspective, the data is the same
Right.
as elsewhere. The speed and the cost side of things is two other key advantages. In Australia, the regulatory approval process for clinical trials, in a majority, and I say probably 97% of all trials, is managed by our local IRB, or what we call a HREC, Human Research Ethics Committee. And that means the ethics committee is the approving body. Our national regulator doesn't actually review clinical trials.
That's different.
They will on certain high-risk products like stem cell products and some other gene therapy agents, but a majority of cases are managed by our local IRB. Now, what that means is the time for the IRB review is much more expeditious than a regulatory process. IRBs will generally meet either fortnightly or monthly. There are some, in fact, that even meet weekly, so that you can have a turnaround time from a submission to an approval in 30 to 45 calendar days.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Now that means then is actually from a process perspective very quick to get an IRB approval in place. And part of what contributes to that time frame is really what the IRB focus on in terms of documentation. The three key pieces that a review will be undertaken is on the investigator's brochure, the protocol, and the informed consent.
Okay.
So the investigator's brochure really is a truncated form of an IND, but it's all in one document, all developed based on ICH E6 guidance.
All right.
And in a ways, it actually means you've got an ability to tailor your discussion that presents the risks and the benefits of the trial to support the approval going forward. So it means then you don't have to prepare an IND. We don't need to have an IND in place to allow the trial to be conducted in Australia. Rather, if you've got an investigator's brochure and you've got your clinical study protocol, and through that you develop your informed consent, that they're the three key documents you need to make a submission to an IRB for trial approval.
And that doesn't, the phase of research doesn't matter.
No, it's all
could
the
be
same
1, 2, 3. Okay.
from a phase 0 up to a phase 4.
Okay.
So that makes that process much more expeditious than a lot of other jurisdictions. Clients might take 6 months to prepare an IND. If you remove that and just focus in on an investigator's brochure, you can reduce that time frame down really significantly. So that's where speed comes into it.
Yeah.
Then there's the cost element. And this is another great attraction, particularly for biotech companies and startups who really are cost conscious. In Australia, R&D activities, and that's sort of most things that can be defined as research and development, can be eligible for a R&D tax incentive payable by the Australian government. Now, there are two forms of the R&D tax incentive, some and a majority of cases. So if a company is receiving less than 20 million Australian dollars in revenue, so for those who are in a startup phase of pre-revenue, then they can receive up to 43.5 cents in the dollar of R&D spend back as a cash rebate. So what that means is for every $100,000 of R&D expense that you conduct in Australia, and the Australian government will give you back up to $43,500 back as a cash rebate.
As a cash rebate.
That's pretty attractive.
No, that is.
And it means then you can reinvest that back into your R&D or use it for other purposes. So it's really making a significant reduction to the cost of the overall program.
How does that work? Is it do the clients have to wait for that, or does it to the end, or?
So no, so what the first thing will be is establishing an Australian entity through which the R&D expense will be incurred.
Okay.
So a company who's based in the US, they will set up a local entity in Australia. That local entity will need to have at least one Australian-based director, and there are people who provide that service. And through that company, that's where the R&D expenses are incurred. In Australia, we also then make a claim based on our financial year, which runs from 1 July to 30 June. So come 30 June, all the R&D activity that's happened in the preceding 12 months is lodged as part of an application, and then once it's assessed and approved, then the cash comes back into the bank.
So in a form, it goes right back into a bank account.
Correct.
And it's really cash.
It's cash. So we've had clients who've done really significant R&D, receiving checks in the mail or cash in the bank of $1, $2, $3 million of
Right.
R&D back. So this is a cost coming back.
So literally though, if a study is, say, a 2 or 3 year study and they're running it with you, after that 1 year, they get that 43.5% replenished, and they can just use that again
To reimburse
to run the study. So it's wow.
They push it back into it, which means their upfront capital requirements can be offset
Yeah.
because they know they're going to get a cash injection back into it whilst the program is running.
Oh, that is amazing, actually.
So it reduces the overall capital raise requirement, because you know that you can then utilize that cash to put back into the program to then fund further R&D. So it's a really beneficial opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was cash like that.
It's cash in the bank.
Or right away, I'm thinking of, there's tax advantages, but this is literally a cash advantage.
Yeah. So it reduces the overall cost for an overall study to occur.
So now we're working together on a study. I know we spoke about this a little bit, but the services that we provide that are outside Australia can somehow or possibly be used for that rebate too?
Yeah. So there's an element called an overseas ruling. So if a sponsor can demonstrate that a particular service cannot be obtained in Australia, or a particular R&D activity cannot be done in Australia, and they can demonstrate that through a market assessment or inquiries through, then they can get what they call an overseas ruling. And that means then the overseas activity can then be a claimable expense to do so. Now, some of the activities that we have seen a number of clients work through, they're doing some non-clinical studies. There are particular animal models that cannot be obtained in Australia. Let's say they want to do a mini pig study or a non-human primate for whatever reason. And unfortunately in Australia, we don't have the facilities to actually run that type of program in Australia. But they can overseas. So if they've shown that the R&D expense is being incurred by the Australian entity, but yet the work's been done overseas, they can still make that a claimable activity. That's just one example. And there are a number of scenarios, really depending on what the program requires.
So let me ask a question then. What about a therapeutic area that's extremely difficult, say a rare disease or something like that?
That's, again, where if you can demonstrate that it's not possible to do the R&D in Australia, then that's where that submission can be made to get an overseas ruling. It'll be done on a case-by-case basis, but there may be valid reasons in which you show, well, unfortunately, we'd like to do it there, but we can't because the service or the population or the activity cannot be done. We want to do it in Australia, but we can't, so therefore we want to get an overseas ruling to allow us to do it offshore.
Right, so the incidence level of that disease you might not have it, so that's possible.
Yeah, that could be an example to look at, yes. Yeah, just being able to show that, the R&D activity that would be done by that Australian entity, it's not possible. So we have an alternate mechanism, but we should still be able to claim it from an R&D tax.
Right, okay, wow. So I know, so we're working together in that you almost serve as our sponsor because they delegate authorities to you, we work through you, and then that allows the sponsor company to get the biggest tax deduction possible for their trial.
Absolutely. It's ways to maximise that R&D expense in doing so, and obviously our teams will be partnered up in delivering a one consistent program that achieves everything that the company desires, but it's really about maximising every dollar of R&D expense that they can then claim, and so coincide in getting their claim refundable back.
Yeah, I'm just still shocked. I didn't realize it was a cash rebate.
It is. So now, if a company was making revenue and they exceeded the $20 million Australian threshold, then they look at it from a tax offset arrangement. So this is where they were basically offsetting it against future revenues. So there are different mechanisms depending on the status of the company and where they are in their evolution.
So how many of your current clients have started with you because of this tax rebate?
We've had probably a vast majority of once either they've already known about it and therefore they wanted an Australian provider. Recently, and a company in New York that we're working with now moved their entire program to Australia because on the back of the R&D tax incentive and the value it gave them from a financial outcome.
I would.
Yeah.
If it was possible, well.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? If you're going to get money back in the, cash in the hand, it's a great opportunity to do so.
Yeah. And then the programs we're working with, we're doing mostly the project management of our sites and the monitoring of our sites, and you take care of the back end work, which I understand. So that all is rebatable.
Absolutely. It's all considered an R&D activity, even, starting from protocol development. That is still part of the R&D activity. So from protocol development right through to your clinical study report and anything in between. That's what's considered the R&D activity, and therefore it's something we want to claim. Even, for example, if a company is supplying their investigational product from overseas and we do some labelling or packaging activities in Australia, that again is an R&D claimable expense because it contributes to the R&D activity.
Is it difficult? Is there a lot of, I'm going to say here, like we say, red tape to get those rebates? Or does it take, you know what I mean? Is it a difficult process, I guess I'm asking?
Relatively, I guess, considering government bureaucracy that often happens, it's not difficult. There is a lot of form that need to be put together and infrastructure, but it's not a big, a load of effort or cost to set up. It's relatively straightforward in that way. Setting up an organisation in Australia is quite a straightforward administrative process.
Right.
There are challenges in terms of bank accounts and setup like those, but once it's in place, it actually is, from a maintenance perspective, quite easy. We obviously need to look at managing the accounts of that Australian entity, and there are varying providers that can do those, as well as make the claims on that company's behalf. So there are a lot of groups who are very skilled at developing the paperwork needed to make it as easy as possible for a client.
Right. I'm curious about something else too that's not about tax rebates, but what is the CRO landscape like in Australia? I know here there's a lot of us, and there's obviously the large ones that probably are in Australia too, medium and smaller groups here, and people, the sponsors will use each group depending on what's best fit for them. But I'm just curious, what is it like by you?
Yeah, look, it's very similar to Australia. We do have quite a number of organisations, and they'll span from single person operations right through to the multinationals. There's been a good bit of consolidation that's occurred in Australia, where quite a number of overseas based CROs have acquired Australian organisations to complement and provide a local support. But there's still quite a large number. The clinical trial industry in Australia has been growing year on year really considerably. And in doing so, it's meant there's opportunities for everyone to grow and develop and have the chance to support local and overseas industry.
Yeah. Is it also like here? So we were a private company for 22 years, and then through the merger, it was backed by venture capital money, private equity. Is that also similar for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think post-COVID and some of the notoriety that's come from clinical research, that there was a lot of interest from private equity and VCs looking to invest to continue to grow. There's been a lot of money put into areas like in Australia, we've got some fantastic phase 1 facilities as well. And there's been a lot of money put into those just to help them grow and expand, which has been really beneficial to our local industry as well. So there's been, quite a number of PE companies that have bought into CROs to help them grow. And some more recently, last sort of 4 to 5 years, there's been quite a bit of investment into those to go from a medium to a larger size. And there's some great stories that goes behind that. Companies like Novatech, who started all those years ago in a very similar pathway to what we have been, and now quite a considerable multinational company and have grown beyond a small office in Sydney.
Yeah.
So there's some good stories around that, but it's a very healthy industry in Australia.
So being that it's a healthy industry, what is it like to acquire talent?
Oh, it's like anywhere. It's probably our biggest challenge ever, and we've very competitive in that way. But I think the way in which Accelagen likes to operate and the way in which we try to manage our staff, we've actually been, people are approaching us.
Oh, that's great.
As opposed to having to respond to ads. Recently we've had quite a number of new additions join, and a good portion of those people who joined were actually referrals from current staff. So that's been such an attraction because, hey, this good things are happening over here. Are you interested? And in doing so, they express an interest, and we've often been able to find a job for them. So the talent's been the hard part. I think the way we operate is unique, so that people, have searched us out and want to come on board.
No, that's fantastic. I know that once we got through COVID here, and so many people retired, right? They decided, they're not going to work anymore for whatever reason. It was really difficult acquiring talent. As a matter of fact, we've documented it. Before COVID and after COVID, the prices of staff was up 20 to 30%, just based on, what they did. Mm-hmm. Project managers, 20%, DM directors is 30%. It was just real eye-opening for us. And I was wondering, have you also had an increase in price like that, or has it been more steady?
No, we've seen it. We've seen it, the rates go up and the requirements, people's salary requirements go up. I think it also reflected changes of cost of living as well, like you see here locally. And it's definitely something we have to weigh up. And obviously we know what our ability is to, and obviously it's important that people are compensated for what they do. On the flip side, though, is that I think what's attracted people to us is the way in which we operate, and it's those indirect things that actually you can't put a price tag on.
Yeah.
That, we talk about work-life balance and balance in general, well-being, and it's things like that have actually attracted people. We've got a policy in place which others we're seeing now are sort of doing the same. Is we give everyone a day per quarter, so every 3 months we ask them to take a day off. Don't put it as vacation leave. Just take a day for yourself.
Oh, that's
nice.
Nice.
We call it a wellness day.
Wellness day.
And we allow people to take that as long as you pre-plan it and approve it with your manager. But what it does do is it gives you a chance to do something for you.
Yeah.
It could just be a day of just enjoying something, taking yourself completely out of your comfort zone and trying something different. And a chance really just to unwind and refocus. We sort of enforce it a little bit to say that you must take it in a 3-month period. You can't accrue them and take 2 days in 1 6-month period. It's actually something we want people to do.
Yeah.
Another thing we also do then is we give everyone their birthday off.
Oh, nice.
So, it's nice to have people in the office for their birthday and have cake or whatever. But just giving them that. So you add all this together, it ends up being an extra week of time that you get for you as an individual to do what you want to do.
Right.
And it's those type of indirect things that I think has attracted people to not, coming in and doing their job and leaving. It's actually there's something for them and investing in there as well.
Right.
And importantly as well, when we talk to any new starter and any of those who want to join, we always say to them, this is who we are and this is how we operate. We want you to be hearing and understanding where we're coming from, and something like that will resonate with you, so that they're coming on for the bigger purpose. It comes back to what we say is the why.
Yeah.
And that is such an important part for what we do.
Yeah. In America, I think it's always been, work balance is always tough because, well, let me ask you this. How many weeks vacation does a normal employee get?
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Okay.
Plus the extra week, so it's effectively
5 weeks. Yeah. So traditionally it's been 2 weeks here, which is not that great. I mean, we do 3 weeks here, but no, I like that idea. Birthdays off.
Yeah.
Mental health day.
Effectively, yes. That's sort of, and it's a chance for us to, because sometimes you get too caught up in the rat race, and it's another task, another deliverable I've got to achieve. But actually, having a day to yourself just to sort of reset and then go on, it just adds such an ability to just get things calm a little bit and
take a deep breath.
And take a day for you. And we try to encourage people just to do this. And if they've got kids, hopefully the kids aren't at home, so they get a chance to do what they need to do, run around, do those errands, do those things you want to do.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's a way of just giving back a little bit. I mean, it's a small thing, but it means a lot.
That you get to take one? Probably not.
Probably not. No, that's really not. No, but I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. All right, I got a question. I'm always curious about this too. It's so general, and how do you actually going to answer it? But patient enrollment in Australia, just say, I'm trying to figure out if it takes longer than it would here. I know it's so dependent on what therapeutic area we're talking about, but
well, look at Australia. We're 27 million population.
Right.
If you look at the way the population's spread, about 65% of the Australian population resides on the eastern seaboard. We've got three main capital cities on the eastern seaboard. The population's very much focused on the metro centres.
Right.
So, as you can imagine, everyone's going after the same pool of patients.
Yeah.
So, our approach is to really put the work in at the start, understand and evaluate, do we have the population to recruit? And if someone comes to us and says, we want to recruit this many people in this time, and this is how many sites we think we want to do, it's going back and saying, well, actually, hang on, we need to reset that expectation. There are some great providers now that are helping with recruitment in terms of advertising and being able to get the trial information out there, but it's a competitive space, and trying to get airtime with different physicians, also quite difficult, as you can imagine, because if they're running multiple studies. And my general philosophy, and rightly or wrongly, if they come back with a feasibility and they say this is how many we can recruit in a given period, generally halve it, and then you're probably something more accurate.
Have it and third it.
And I think it puts some realism around it. On the flip side, though, we've been very fortunate. We had a study we worked on that was running across multiple jurisdictions. Australia's recruitment just blew the doors off it, and we were so far ahead of other jurisdictions.
Right.
And I think it was probably a combination of the indication and the investigators' real interest and commitment to it as well.
Right.
But we've seen a lot more avenues around advertising, and particularly on social media, that's really helping to bolster recruitment rates. Technology, in order to be able to get access to patients, is helping. We've in Australia as well, funding for particularly newer therapies does take a lot longer. So without the funding, generally it's not getting into the hands of patients. So this is where new and novel agents can really help, because you're not competing with new existing high-tech therapies.
Exactly.
And that does help the situation. But I think, like most countries, it's a really difficult exercise, and there are some wins and some losses, but I think majority of the way we like to do it, and it's a lot of the work up front, is that really helps us with the wins. Yeah, no, it's the same here, just on a bigger scale now. Obviously, we have about 330 million people here, but we could be, if you look at clinicaltrials.gov, you can see that same indication. There might be 100 studies for it or 60 studies for it. So it's the same problem here, just on a different scale. Yeah. We're always competing for the same good sites, and it's important. Like, we establish relationships, and we've been doing it for so many years now, that a lot of these investigators are like family to us. And
building that up over the years has helped us quite a bit with enrollment. Or, as you know, during query process, we get a lot of help.
Yep.
More than maybe a large CRO that is not going to help them out so much.
Well, and that's a really key point is you've got that personal side and you've got that personal relationship. So
Right.
it's invests both ways. And again, we've been fortunate that there's our regular physicians that we can pick up a phone and say, hey, what do you think? And we're going to get an honest answer. And if they commit, then they are committed. And that's just, it takes out such risk out of a program. And it's hard, it takes time. And that also comes back to the people who are doing it and their ability to build a rapport with really busy physicians and help them out wherever we can. And I guess that's, again, part of the philosophy in the way we like to personalize the relationship.
Right. Do you see, though, with sites, are there independent clinical research sites that only do that, or are there more physicians' offices that also do it, or academia, I guess, as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of all. There's the dedicated clinical trial sites are more directed towards phase 1, and particularly on healthy volunteer studies. There we have probably 1 or 2 per capital city where those phase 1 units apply. There are sort of physicians who will operate really in the clinical trial space only, but they'll leverage off their community of colleagues and friends who can refer patients into that site.
Right.
So, majority of the trials are really run through the major teaching hospitals, major tertiary hospitals.
Okay.
And collecting on their patient pool. But then they also utilise their private facilities to then refer back in. It also comes back to the level of infrastructure the sites have to be able to execute in. And sometimes that's a real challenge, and we need to take it out of the private facility into a larger public facility because you've got that access to the infrastructure that's needed.
Right. So with most of the work being done through the institutions, can you do central advertisement campaigns to help them, or is that not so cooperative?
No, they like it and do request it in a lot of ways too, because again, they'll have patients who will come from geographically different areas, so they want to get the word out there to access this new trial or new therapy. So they're often real big advocates of advertising to really help them get access to their own patients. As you can imagine, in the public system, you can be a face in the crowd, but by actually putting the advertising out there, it gives someone to search, look for a physician or look for their staff and actually get access to the trial, and it empowers the patient as well to get involved.
Well, excellent. Well, I know I have to get you out of here. You have to head to Manhattan. But I want to thank you so much. I learned so much today, especially the cash rebates. It's blowing me away. But again, thanks so much. And you and I will continue to work together. And if anybody has any comments, they can jot it down or wants information from us, we'll be happy to provide it. So, Greg, thank you so much.
Thanks, Rich. Really appreciate it.
You got it.